Dwayne and Lawrence, how are y'all?
We are good.
We're
Thanks
good.
for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us on.
We got to ask the question that everybody wants to know, and that is, how long have y'all been together, and how did y'all first meet?
It was officially 10 years in June. Our first date was actually on June 28th on the Stonewall anniversary, which is kind of crazy.
Right.
We met at a pride event, a Black Pride event in Columbus, Ohio. And yeah, it was kind of a thing where we knew all the same people but had never met each other, which was really weird. And he came into the event, and I literally, and my friend remembers this to this day, I turned to my friend, I was like, who is that? Because he came in like all bubbly and like was working the room, and Lawrence is a very gregarious, like, you know, he everyone in the room, like he goes to a party, everyone in the room is his best friend right in the night. He has that kind of sense about him. I don't have that. So when he came in, and he was just like, everybody was really greeting him, and he was the kind of became the man of the moment. I would turn to my husband, I turned to my friend, and I was like, who is that? I need to meet him. And so later he came out on the patio where we were, and we exchanged numbers. And then I called him the next week. And when I called him, he was like, who is this? And how did you get my number?
Right.
Right. Like I said,
I just don't give out my number to anybody.
And there was drinks involved. So I don't think he remembered him giving me his number. But then we talked on the phone for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I convinced him to go on a date with me. And we had our first date on June 28th. And it was we both say it was the best first date we ever had.
Yeah.
And we never stopped being with each other since then.
Right.
Dwayne just said that was the best date that y'all had ever had. Tell us about this date. What made this date so special?
It became a great date because it was catastrophe for me the first 30 seconds of the date. Because at that time in our city, we live in a very rural city, and the meters were changing over from the coin meters to electronic meters. And so I was like, oh my God, I rushed home to get dressed, and I was like, I don't have any change to put in the meter. So I'm circling around trying to find the spot. And so I was like, I don't want to call him. So he's like, hey, are you here? He's calling me. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to circle around to find a parking spot. And so I find a parking spot, but then I'm like, oh my God, it's coin. It's not a card operated one. So I was just like, oh my God. So he calls me back, and I'm like, I'm already parked, but I think I have to run to Chase Bank, which was like a block up, and get some cash so I can get coins. He was like, no, I have some change in my car. So I felt kind of bad because I'm like, oh my God, here we are on this first date, and he's having to run back to his car for change. So he did. He ran back to the car. He met me on the corner. So we always say we met at the corner of Gay.
It was actually
because it was Gay
Street and High Street. And he always liked to tell people, yeah, Dwayne paid me on the corner, and I went on a date with him. That's not the story.
Because we met because the restaurant we was going to was on Gay Street, ironically.
It was. Yeah.
And so he met me at the corner of Gay Street. And so he's like, here's change for the meter. So I'm running back. And then we went into the restaurant, and it was just like really a great experience. And I think I went back home and I called my friend, and I was like, he's really cool. You know, he's not what I thought, but you know, he's really cool. And what I mean by that is I was expecting him to be like every other guy I went out on a date with at that time, you know, just kind of like have a date, want to hook up the next date to do something sexual. And he wasn't like that. He was like, really like, let's meet up the next date, you know, for coffee or for lunch. And I hadn't experienced that, you know, in my city before. I had to go out of town to experience stuff like that. So it was just cool. Our meeting was very cool. And that date just really solidified that I think we were going to have something long lasting. I didn't know what at that time, but I knew it was going to be something.
As y'all continue dating and getting to know each other, when did y'all really know, okay, this is the one?
So we're very different in that Lawrence, you know, he grew up, we both actually are preacher's kids. Like his grandfather's a preacher. My father is a minister. But Lawrence is a little more conservative than I am. So when it comes just to dating in general, so he would not get intimate with me until he knew, and that was 3 months into our relationship, and we did not sleep together for 3 months, and so there was a whole 3 month kind of courting period, and so I'm like,
sure.
I had never been on a with a guy and not ain't gone that long, which is just to be honest. And so I was like, you know what? We're just gonna lock this down. So I planned on our kind of 3 month anniversary. I rented a cabin and like we did our first kind of weekend trip.
Yeah.
And I bought like all the stuff. We did a bonfire and we did, I bought the sweetheart cabin that had the flowers and all the stuff in it, and trying to be super romantic.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the weekend we said we fell in love. And really, after that, we knew for sure this was it.
So y'all also are both preachers' kids.
Yeah.
What was that like? Like, were both of y'all families accepting, and what was it like introducing each other to each other's families?
I'm from the big Pentecostal organization, the COGIC. So, I had always heard my whole life, the whole abomination, you're going to hell. I heard that my whole life. But, it wasn't really more so in my family dynamic, where it was more like the church dynamic. In my inner circle, in my family, I was accepted for who I was. I didn't really understand then, being a kid, what that meant. And I think that, it was kind of safeguarded. My family kind of safeguarded who I was. But then when I kind of like went off on my own spiritual journey and I was really praying and I asked the Lord, I was just like, I don't know if I want to be, I don't know if you will have me be with a man or be with a woman. But I'm really tired of just wrestling back and forth. I stood in the prayer lines and I did all the whole lift up your hands and, the whole spraying with the oil. And I did all the things that they said you're supposed to do, to not have this sin,
Right.
you. So I was just like, I'm wrestling. I don't know which way to go. I don't know if you have me be, my exact words, if you remember, I said, I don't know if you'll have me be with a man or with a woman. I said, but Lord, whoever you have for me, I want them to be for me. I started listing off things that I wanted. I said, I want them to love me. I want to be able to have a family. And, I just was listing off things. And like, as serious as I am, I just, remember just crying, crying out to Lord and really like just praying. And I remember I, for a moment, just like fell out because I was like, praying. And I remember falling out and I remember hearing the voice, hearing the, like what I, the voice of the Lord, people go, not being deep, but I just remember hearing the voice of the Lord tell me to keep living my life the way it's meant to be. And I just remember when I got up, just remember that, keep living myself authentically, being who I am. And that's kind of like who, from that moment, I started presenting was my authentic self. And I really remember at that age just being like, this is who I am. This is who I like, and it's okay. It's okay for me to go to church. It's okay for me to sing. And if you don't want me here, I don't have to be here. So that kind of became my attitude at a young age. So when Dwayne and I met, it was at that time where it was just like, I just prayed, but I don't know. I don't know if this is the devil coming to tempt me. So I had to be sure, and I think I shared that with him before. I told him, I was like, I'm not just going to have sex with you. That's not who I am. I have moral standards. This is who I am. This is what I'm looking for in my life at this time. If that's not you, then we don't need to connect on that type of level, because I believed in soul ties. And whoever you laying down with, you really connecting your spirit with that person. And I was really searching for somebody who I just really wanted to be with. It's kind of hard to explain, but I kind of felt like there was a path I was meant to go on. And so, that was kind of like that time that Dwayne and I met. And it was just like, we have to be sure. So we didn't have sex like for a while. Because it was just like, no, we need to be sure. And that's not what I wanted our relationship to be based on. Because I also felt like at the time we knew a lot of people who was in relationship in and out, in and out, in and out. And we kind of was tired of kind of like seeing that. And I don't know, like I said, it just felt like a mission when we got together. It was like, it was something greater than he and I. And I know I'm taking a long time, sorry, babe. But we went to a church service in the middle when we were dating. And this is kind of like around that time. And he was going to a church that was inclusive. Mm-hmm. And I had never been in that type of inclusive environment before. And the service was very high. And, it was just like, this is what I experience when I'm in, my regular service. And so the pastor called both of us up. The assistant pastor called both of us up. And she kind of what we call prophesied to Dwayne. And then I was like, at first I was like, I just don't go up for people to lay hands on me and stuff. What's she about to say to me? But she turned to me and she said, you're attached to him for a reason. Your life will be blessed, not only just in the things that you want and that you've prayed for. So it's like she solidified, not even knowing who I was and not even have talked to me, the things that I kind of asked the Lord for. And that was early on. She was like, and if you lean in, I was like, lean in? Because, she was like, if you lean in and follow the plan that God has for y'all's life, you both will be blessed. And it was just like, from that moment, we went off to the cabin, and it was just like, things just really started connecting and clicking in our life. And sorry to take up so much time, but that's kind of like what it was.
Yeah, Lawrence's family has been very accepting from the beginning.
Yeah.
His grandmother immediately, like I remember going to their first. They are a very tight knit family. They're very close. Yeah. They're the family that just shows up at your house unannounced, and that's okay. I didn't grow up in that type of family, so they're very tight knit. So I went to they have Sunday dinner every Sunday. Yeah. So I went to a Sunday dinner, and they immediately welcomed me. The grandmother gave me a big hug, and she's one of my biggest supporters to this day. His parents, they live in Texas. We visit them at least two or three times a year. They're a major part of our lives. My family is a little different. Like a lot of my extended family is very welcoming. My brother and my sisters, and I have a lot of aunts and uncles who are supportive. But my parents are still on a journey, basically. And sorry, the dog is coming. Apologies. But this is Chester, by the way.
Right.
Hi, Chester.
So my parents, they're still on the journey. They're very conservative, apostolic, and they were okay with me for a long time. I felt like we had broken a barrier, but it's always been, I realized, more tolerance and acceptance. And so even today, there's been issues. And so we've kind of parted ways a bit. And it's just, so you can still have family and love them from afar. And so I've chosen to kind of love some people from afar, because there are some folks who are not accepting of our situation.
So y'all are also parents. Y'all are parents. Share with us what that journey has been like, and congratulations on the recent finalization and the process. So share with us that journey. When did y'all know y'all wanted to be parents, and what has this journey been like? Becoming parents.
We started the process a long time ago, like a couple of years ago. We went through to a training, like just a workshop they were doing locally. This group called the Family Pride Network. They had a conference about called Pathways to Parenthood, how can LGBTQ people start families. And so we thought about insemination for a while. But we went through was going through this training and that talked about foster care, and that piqued our interest. We some of our nieces and nephews and cousins that we help raise, they have been through trauma and dealt with traumatic situations. And so as we were learning about foster kids and the trauma they experience, and then just the overwhelming number of kids in the system, we thought, well, maybe maybe we could start here instead. And so we kept going through the trainings and finished the trainings. We went through Open Arms Adoption, which is an amazing adoption agency here in Ohio. That's been amazing. They helped us throughout the whole process. They paired us with the Richland County Job and Family Services, which is Mansfield in Ohio. It's a rural town. They had a little kid there who needed a home, and they had introduced us to a few kids, but some of them all fell through for some reason or another. And Quentin just kept coming up, and so we ended up meeting him. He was 8 at the time, and it was just like virtual because we were coming out of COVID, and so we met virtually first, and like we lit up and he lit up, and they said before he got on the call that when he heard that he was 2 dads, he kind of was like didn't know if this is what he wanted.
Yeah,
but that's also because he had never been really exposed to LGBTQ people, so he didn't know what to expect. And so, but when he got on the call, by the end of that half hour, I think it was 45 minutes, he was like, I want to move in today.
Right.
So there was something about, I don't know, we just kind of clicked. And so then we met, and we did there's like a 45-day matching process where they want you to get to know the child before they move in. We did all of that, and he moved in Martin Luther King weekend this year. So he's moved in January. He's been in with us for almost 9 months. A little over nine months now, and it's been challenging, obviously, being a new dad, being new parents, but it's been very rewarding. He, he's just a very special kid, and we're lucky, and we're trying to figure out if we want to do it again. So, we'll see. We'll see.
What are some of the challenges that y'all have faced, both in the identity and navigating parenthood as 2 Black gay men together, and also raising a young man as 2 Black gay men?
Whenever we are on Facebook or look online or Instagram and look at all the Black gay Instagram couples that are out there, they are all in like Atlanta or DC or California. We don't see examples of us here. Which is interesting. I think that feels like one of the main barriers, but we've been very lucky in that we found a school that's been very supportive, that a lot of LGBTQ families send their kids to. Like I said, we have a very large village. So I feel like with him, when he first moved in, like obviously he had a lot of questions. We allowed him to ask whatever questions he wanted without judgment.
Yeah, we were very open.
And we're also I have a background in sexual health education and just LGBTQ activism. And Lawrence has been doing some of that work with me too over the past several years. And so we're also we don't feel like any conversation is taboo. So we just allow him just to be himself.
Right.
We make sure that we're not trying to pass on those toxic masculinity traits that sometimes can be passed on. We don't use phrases like, be a man or man up or like stuff like that. Like, we allow him to be whatever he feels like he needs to be or wants to be when it comes to his identity. And so I think he has really blossomed in that. And I think that's great. He came to us at a kindergarten reading level, even though he was in 2nd grade. And in just 4 months, he went from a kindergarten reading level to a 3rd grade reading level in just 4 months. And so I feel like I personally believe that belonging creates opportunity and inclusion creates opportunity. And so when you're able to be yourself, you're able to kind of reach heights you may not have known were possible before. So I think he's a great example of that. He came into a home that accepted him for all of who he was. And he's been able to flourish. So we've been very lucky in that we have a community that has really, really supported us.
Why is visibility important? What gives you the courage to live out loud as a couple and as a family?
Like I was saying earlier, a lot of times you can't be what you can't see. And I think it's just very powerful when you can be a possibility model for others, and also show that or just normalize the conversation, or normalize the existence.
Yeah.
Just normalizing our existence is important. Because they say, changing hearts and minds isn't about legislation and policy. It's about you knowing somebody who has that experience and you loving somebody that has that experience. Yeah. So being visible hopefully creates a space where someone says, well, I know them and they're great. And so the way that I think about them is not okay. And so I think that's really, for me, why visibility is just so important. Because visibility is the way you break down barriers,
right?
Truthfully.
And that's why I still go to church. I still show up and I am who I am. It's just because it's just like for so many years. And I can just remember growing up and people being called out and ostracized because of what, who they were and who they chose to love. And it was just like, you don't have to be that way. You don't have to call out people. You don't have to feel like you can't go to church because, of somebody going to call, somebody's going to call you out or somebody's going to preach homosexuality over your life. Like there's a place and there are people who you can look up to, so I am visible in church so that young person who was me and, may have been wondering, Lord, am I supposed to be with a man or a woman? They can look over and they can say, oh, well, that's Lawrence. And I know he's married. He has a son. He's with Dwayne. So it gives them hope. So, it may not send the right message to the pulpit all the time, but I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the person who's in the pew. So, because I was that person who was in the pew wondering, is this for me? When am I going to find somebody like me? Are there people like me? And so that's kind of like my friend group helps solidify that because I found my best friends of 20 years I found in church because I was young. I saw them coming in church and I was like, oh, I wonder what that group of guys, what do they do? No. It was a very like Atlanta church scene where, 5 guys dressed up going to, a church. So we're all friends. And it was just like, I wanted to be a part of that friend circle. And, although I'm the youngest one, they let me in. So it was just like being visible. And now I look back, 10 years into my younger self sitting in church, asking those questions and wondering. And now, I go to church and I'm confident, if I want to put on nail polish, I put on nail polish. If the church mother's going to look, I'm going to look at you too. No. Mother, why isn't your nails done? No. So, I am who I am in whatever space I go in. And like you said, if you don't want me in your space, I don't have to be there because I have a space of my own that I've created. So it's just, solidifying who you are. And kind of like in today's time, just, we've gone through COVID. We've lost a lot of people. People's dynamics and family dynamics have changed. And, a lot of families during the pandemic, lost that connection factor. And so we even experienced it within our own family. So, it's just us staying visible and being what I like to call authentic to who, we are as individuals, as a family, and as a unit.
Y'all have built something that y'all should be proud of. And so if there was something that the two of you could say to each other right now about your relationship that you want each other to remember forever, what would that be?
That's a good one, Sampson. You want to go?
I was going to say, just remember the love we built between each other. We're very intentional about you know, how we love on each other and how we show love to others.
Yeah, I think we're a team, and it's I would just say to you, it's great to be a part of a team that where we both uplift each other. We didn't talk about this. We both own our own businesses outside of the work that we do, and we both support each other in doing that and starting that. And I think that's really what I feel like. Sometimes people forget. You know, when you see the romantic comedies, you think love is a certain thing, and it's work. It's to be intentional about your love, and you have to be intentional about the life you want to build together. And so I think that we have done that, and we've been successful, I think.
I agree.